Good morning. Glad to see as many people have joined our last data protection update for the year based on the Data Protection Law 2020, which was enacted in July and became enforceable in October. We're going to talk today about security and security breaches, certain articles in the data protection law that cover these items and what they mean, how to basically interpret them and understand what is required. We have Veena Durarajan, who is not only the DIFC DPO, but she is also our security guru, if you will. She does all things security for DIFC and is really, really knowledgeable in the subject area. But we have also appointed her as our data protection officer, as we're required to have a data protection officer under the Article 16 of the law. And we couldn't think of anybody better suited to take on this role. And also Ken Coggill from the DFSA. So he is the Associate Director of Operational Risk and is one of the, sort of, I guess, gurus behind their cyber intelligence platform. I don't know how else to describe you, Ken. I think that's the only word that comes to mind for both of you. You're very, very knowledgeable, both of you, in your subject matter and also in the support that you give the DIFC and the DFSA with respect to security and security breaches. So let's dive right in. I think, let me see, is my slide going to work? There we go. Okay. So as always, I'm going to just start with sort of a side-by-side of the 2007 law and the 2020 law and some of our key updates. And you'll see here I have highlighted that security breach reporting is our main topic area. But again, all of these, and the reason I go through these again very briefly in terms of the data protection principles and main topic areas that you need to be aware of, is that they all really do hang together. You can't really see any of them in isolation. One supports the other and is really quintessential to the very first one there, which is accountability. That is, the biggest thing that we want to see from the entities in the DIFC is that they're being accountable, they're being transparent with respect to the processing operations that they undertake within their entities. That basically means, having the appropriate policies in place and the appropriate staff and experts in place to be able to respond to data protection incidents and security related incidents for this subject matter today, for example, to be able to respond to data subjects' rights requests, to know what to do with respect to transferring data internationally, and just basically corresponding with the data protection principles that are set out in Article 9 of the law. So what I wanted to mention, having said that, is with respect to the GDPR. That's the big question that we get. And I know that it's the big law that everybody kind of looks to in the EU. There is another law now will be sort of our other focus, the UK Data Protection Act of 2018, which when Brexit is complete in a few weeks' time, will also probably have an impact on your lives. It is very, very much like the GDPR. I'd sort of think of it as GDPR plus, actually, as it's quite well adjusted with respect to certain things that the GDPR maybe doesn't completely cover, or enhances certain issues that are found in the GDPR. But let's take the GDPR for now. Is the DIFC Data Protection Law 2020 like the GDPR? Yes. In a lot of ways, it was based on the GDPR, but other international data protection laws, they all contain similar principles and components. They feed each other's best practices, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities. You can read this Clyde & Co. article that was published that will help answer the question more specifically. But one thing to note is that regarding security breach reporting, the DIFC law is similar, but doesn't have, for starters, the 72-hour notification requirement. So just briefly about that, in the GDPR and in the rest of Europe and many others like this law, there is a specific time limit given for notification about a security breach. And we'll get into sort of specifics about that later. This is not present in the DIFC data protection law, and I'll talk about the reasons why in a moment. But I wanted to highlight that to you right up front while we're talking about comparisons of laws. So let's get into security breaches. Okay, so what are the general requirements? We're going to talk about security principles and practices here. So Article 9(1)(I) mentions this phrase that you may have all heard about: technical and organizational measures. And that text there is directly from the law. Personal data must be kept secure, including being protected against unauthorized or unlawful processing, including transfers, and against accidental loss, destruction, or damage using appropriate technical or organizational measures. And I have there in parentheses, AKA TOM, right? So if you want to sort of remember a short little acronym to remember that, TOM is a good one. But what does TOM look like then? It can be in many, many forms. You know, these are not just technical sort of firewall and IT security sort of logical things that you would put in place in your systems, which is in that first bullet point, but it's also security and IT informational training. It's phishing alert add-ons in Outlook, for example. If you can add this little button, for example, that we have in DIFC, when we think that we have received a phishing email or some other type of scamming email or what have you in our inboxes, which we rarely do because our security team is quite on top of things. But when we do get that sort of thing, we have the ability to press a little button at the top of Outlook that says we think this is phishing, and it gets reported, and we have a whole process behind that. Again, in the next bullet point, the ISMS process and policies. You can even get a certification for your company. ISO 27001 may have moved on now to another number, but for our purposes, we all know and love ISO 27001, which again, DIFC is certified as, and you can also look into getting yourself for your entity if you really wanted to take security to the next level. But it informs everything about security that you need to know, including things even like having policies on entering and exiting the building, physical security of the site that you're working in, physical security of your servers. So it's not just logical security in your IT systems. Security comes down to anything and everything that you could possibly imagine that might put personal data and or corporate data at risk. Carrying around your laptop and leaving it somewhere, in a restaurant or something when you meet friends after work. Having your iPhone with your office email on it, but no password or face recognition to get into your iPhone. All of these things, just even your CEO of your company and their travel habits and the places that they go to, you may need some sort of incident plan for something happens to him or her, if that person meets with some sort of aggression when they travel to some place that might particularly be interested in questioning them, let's say, a little bit too long at the border, or of maybe even a place that is a little bit more dangerous in terms of robbery or what have you. Certain cities that maybe they don't know you don't leave your laptop in the back of your car, and they do. So, these are all things that you can kind of think about. Every scenario that you can possibly come up with is something that you might want to consider in terms of security and what falls into this category of technical and organizational measures. And then we also have, for example, external alert tools such as the DFSA cyber incident platform. So we'll get to that in just a second. Vina, if you're there, I wanted to ask you to maybe talk a bit about the security piece first, and then we'll turn to Ken to go through a bit on the DFSA platform.
Thank you, Laurie. For the sake of the discussion, we can consider, basically we are talking of technical and organizational measures. We can stack it into 4 different stacks. Laurie has already covered, she has given a big bird's eye view of the whole thing, we can say like 4 stacks. Stack number 1, governance stack. So basically the most important thing is having the buy-in of the management. That is critical to do a proper deployment of information security. Then once you have the buy-in, you have the governance layer set where you roll out implementable policies and procedures, just like Laurie was talking. And in this, you have to factor in the regulatory and legal requirements that the organization needs to meet. And of course, you look at the best of breed standards, regulations, ISO 27001, NIST, whatever, and then come up with your policies, procedures. And one of the important things from an IT security perspective is in the process implementation, you make sure that you factor in change management, things like vulnerability management, things like incident management, and everything you do, make sure they are measurable. So basically you have KPIs, which then cascade all up to the management so that there is a reporting layer back. This is very important. So this is from an IT security perspective. From an information security perspective, make sure that you have a good risk assessment done from an information security angle. That is very important. And that also has to cascade up to the management and to the board. So this is the governance stack. Now let me come to the second stack, which is the technology stack. Technology stack is easier. So basically you implement mitigatory and compensatory technical controls. Example like Laurie was saying, firewalls, intrusion protection systems, web application firewalls, reverse forward proxies. Well, one of the important things is multi-factor authentication because of the various different types of attacks that we have now. And please make sure that all your endpoints have good endpoint control so that you will be able to, protect and also do a triage in case there is a compromise or there is an attack. Now, the third layer I would like to talk about is the IT security operations. So basically, you need to make sure that there is a proper IT security monitoring, logging, and then the security testing such as pen tests, red teaming, blue teaming exercises. Then all the controls are at least once annually tested. And every month do proper security reviews. Example, detect are there rogue softwares implemented? Are there rogue devices in the environment? Those are simple examples that I'm giving. And the fourth stack would be the awareness stack. So in awareness stack, you do proper training, train your employees, train your third party, make sure that they are aware of what the organizational requirement for information security is, what they should do, what they should not do, and how they should act when they see an incident. What are the escalation procedures? All this training. So this is just an overall high level, a thing on in the technical and organizational controls. One important thing that has to be taken into account is third-party management. So even all the third-party stack needs to come into this, into all of these stacks, into the governance layer, technology layer, IT security operations, and awareness stack. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you so much, Veena. And so for the external alert tools piece that we were talking about, the DFSA Cyber Incident Platform, briefly before we turn to Ken, I just want to point out on the right side here of the screen, you'll see a quick links screenshot that I took. If you are using the DIFC portal, which Ken will mention as well in the next slide, there is a link that we've provided for non-financial services entities to be able to reach and sign up for the DFSA Cyber Threat Intelligence Platform. So there is a sort of connection that we try to make to be able to communicate your details to the DFSA, and then they will reach out and give you access to the portal. It's a really, really helpful tool, and it is, again, when you see tools like this or other maybe even training programs or sending people out to conferences or what have you, these are all things that go towards pulling in that technical and organizational measures piece that we all need in our organizations. So over to you, Ken, please, if you don't mind. I'm going to just go to the next slide and let you have your say on the cyber threat intelligence platform.
Okay, thanks, Lori. So an important element of protecting your environment, the systems, and the data, and Lena mentioned awareness as well. An important element is being aware of what are the threats to that environment. So to assist that, within the DIFC, there really isn't any sort of a threat intelligence platform that has been available. If you're a bank onshore, there is an available platform. If you're a large multinational institution, you probably already belong to a platform like the FSISAC. There are facilities available in Europe, but within the UAE, there hasn't been anything. So in January of this year, we launched TIP. It's the DFSA Cyber Threat Intelligence Platform. And for those of you that are a little more technically savvy and aware of these, this is we're using as a MISP, an instance of MISP, so it's an open source platform. And it's in its simplest form, it's just a mechanism, an electronic mechanism to share information at its core. What's important, though, to note is where is the information coming from? The underlying concept of the platform is that members share information, and all of the entities that operate within the DIFC, whether you're a regulated financial institution or a non-regulated company operating, everyone is eligible to participate in this platform. And the basic concept is that what you put on the platform, if you identify a cyber threat, you put that information on the platform, and another company that is in the DIFC that's registered is able to see that information. Now, what happens is oftentimes we don't all have different capabilities to recognize threats, and we have different capabilities when to post the information to understand the types of threats we're seeing, and each company is at a different level of maturity. So to make sure that the platform is continuously providing useful information for everyone that participates, we built an ecosystem into the platform. So on the right side of the circle on the slide, you see DIFC firms. DIFC firms are the members of the community. To support that, if we go around counterclockwise, at the top, we as a government entity get feeds from the Dubai Electronic Securities Center desk, and we get it from AE Cert. And that information we take and we plug into the system and make that available for all the member firms. We also entered into arrangements with third-party cybersecurity vendors. There's 3 of them that are listed here: Palo Alto, Kaspersky, and Recorded Future. They provide us with specific threat information, and soon we will be having periodic threat reports that we'll make available off the platform for others to view as well. And then to take all this information and to curate it, we've engaged with Help AG. We've contracted with them to manage the platform. What Help AG does is they take all of the information that the cybersecurity experts put on the platform. They take the information that we get from AE Cert and Desk. They take the information that any of you would upload, and then any information we gather from the other external communities we've connected to. They take all of that information, make the connections between it, make it all make sense, and they put it on the platform. Any additional information that they have that might enrich any threat information, they put it onto the platform. So we're very careful to make sure that what goes on the platform is usable and actionable information. So Help AG does all the filtering process for us on there. So since we've launched, we're up to about 160 new threats on average per week that are posted to the platform. In total, the platform at the moment is housing over 58,000 threats and 3 million different attributes. But the important number is the new threats that are going up, and that's about 160 a week. There's over 150 registered users on the platform, and we are engaging now with other regional regulators and their communities to connect them to the platform and other institutions as other communities to help enrich the information that we're getting. And the types of information that's on there is ransomware, phishing attacks. We are seeing targeted attacks at the financial sector, attacks targeted at bank customers to get credit card and other like information from them. I would encourage everybody to register for the platform. There is no cost to you to register for the platform, and it will be that way for at least the next 2 to 3 years. One important element of this is we wanted this to be available to everyone. Every other platform we're aware of in existence has some membership cost. These are not free to operate, so there is some cost, but for now the DFSA is shouldering the cost of this. and we've made arrangements where we're able to do that for a period of time. So I would encourage you, while this is available now, to do register for it. There is very good information. We've received very positive feedback from the institutions that are on the platform, and some have connected us to their global threat intelligence platforms as well, because they've been satisfied with the quality of information that we've been able to post and make available on this. So do register. If you're a DFSA authorized institution, you can register through the DFSA's e-portal. And if you're a DIFC registered entity not regulated by us, you can register through the DIFC's e-portal. Once you register, there is a terms and conditions that you'll have to agree to. You agree to those terms and conditions, and then we'll provide you with a number of manuals. There is a guide into using the platform and a manual for how to actually operate it. There is a user guide that goes through case studies that explains what information to put on the platform, how to use the information. It does it through case studies and examples. And if you have any questions, once you've gone through the manuals, please read through the manuals first. But then if you have questions, you can reach out to us at TIP, it's on the slide here, at dfsa.ae. And that's TIP@dfsa.ae. Lori, I'll hand back to you. If anyone has any questions, and of course you have the functionality, you can send those through and I'll answer those for you.
Yep,
Thanks,
brilliant.
Lori.
Thanks, Ken. Yep, thank you so much. See what I mean, guys? Gurus. That's why I kind of had to use that word twice. It's just so appropriate. They're both really knowledgeable. And again, if there are any questions at all that you want to ask about either, data protection and security, or have issues with respect to that in the DIFC, there is a DPO in DIFC that you can speak with or send questions or information to. And again, with respect to the threat intelligence platform, this is such an important tool to understanding what the threats are in your region or globally even. I mean, this is all information that comes from everywhere. And, knowing what you're up against is part of those technical and organizational measures that are so important and critical to a good data protection compliance program. I can't stress it enough. If you haven't signed up for this free threat intelligence platform yet with the DFSA, I really think that you should. It's something that will help you prepare better for the things that are looming out there. And if you look at that one bullet point here, 160 new threats per week, that's significant. And I always say it, and I always touch wood when I do, but it's not when we find out that there's been a breach, or if somebody is trying to hack into our systems or breach and take data from them or what have you. It's definitely happening all the time. It's just whether or not somebody gets through your security systems. And one of the best ways that you can find out before it's too late is knowing what's out there. So this is really innovative. Kudos to Ken and the DFSA and his team. They put a lot of time and energy into this and thought, and really could be a very helpful thing. This is a innovative thing to have in this region that, as he said, wasn't there before. So that's kind of where we start with respect to security and what's in the principles portion of the Data Protection Law 2020 from Article 9, as I said. It tells us that we need to have the security pieces in place. They're building blocks as part of the other principles. They're really one of the base supporting blocks of any good compliance program that you need to have, a foundation sort of cornerstone. But then we go to Articles 41 and 42 of the Data Protection Law, which is about security breach reporting to the commissioner and or the data subject. Now, this is something that's new in the Data Protection Law. We didn't necessarily previously have a requirement, as in Article 42, to report to the data subject. The requirement to report a security breach to the commissioner was always there. And you can see here under Article 41, some of the wording again, if there is a personal data breach that compromises a data subject's confidentiality, security, or privacy. Now, how do you know whether it's done that? This is a sort of evaluation that you have to do that we'll talk about a little bit later. But let's look at Article 42 as well. it says to report to the data subject when a personal data breach is likely to result in a high risk to the security or rights of a data subject as soon as practicable in the circumstances. And if there is an immediate risk of damage to the data subject, the controller shall promptly communicate with the affected data subject. This is something that, again, isn't mandatory. It is an assessment that you have to take, but if in your assessment you reach the conclusion that it is likely to result in a high risk to the security or rights of the data subject, then you do need to find a way to communicate that to the data subject, whether it's directly or not. So as I said, having mentioned those, we'll talk about some of the specifics around this. Now, there's no mention of a specific window in which to report. No 72 hours, 48 hours, some places even have a little bit longer or even a little bit shorter than that. Why have we said no window in which to report? There are a couple of reasons. We considered it, but we thought better to not, because for our larger organizations in the DIFC, commercial banks and multinational companies, so on and so forth, consultancies, law firms, what have you, they're probably already in some way or another dealing with presence in Europe and or the UK and other places too that have similar types of laws like New Zealand, Japan, Australia, Canada, what have you, where there are specific window reporting requirements. And you are dealing with 72 hours from the time that you find out about a breach. Okay. 72 hours is, for all intents and purposes, a very short window in order to be able to report what happened in a breach and get everything together and be able to do the research and prove it technically and so on and so forth. So we left it out for the purposes of protecting our smaller organizations that maybe have never dealt with the data protection law before, or they're new to the DIFC and they're a small to medium company. They don't necessarily have such an international presence. They may not necessarily even be subject to the GDPR or all the other laws that I mentioned, UK, Australia, Canada, etc. So there needs to be a bit of flexibility for them as well to be able to adapt and understand the regulations and requirements and to be able to properly report. When you have a large organization that has all of those mechanisms in place for reporting and they're still not making a 72-hour deadline window and potentially subject to fines, we're going to sort of go with the flow on those because they're already working up against a pretty tight clock in other jurisdictions, most likely. And if they're not, we trust that they will be transparent and report as soon as practicable to us. But for the smaller organizations, the more local organizations and so on, we want to be able to be supportive as a regulator and understand something has happened. It doesn't necessarily mean that no action will be taken. It doesn't even necessarily mean that, if there was a breach of the law that led to this sort of breach of security, that we wouldn't maybe take enforcement action or what have you. But at the same time, we do want to be able to extend that offer of support to be able to work with you on what it is you're looking for in a security breach, even, without giving legal guidance necessarily, but at the same time, sort of understanding what happened, asking the questions, from our view that we would want to know more about that perhaps you didn't provide as a smaller organization or even know to report on. So that's part of why we don't have that specific window. Who knows, it may change in the future. We may see it as something that is required, but and especially, as I said before, in a time and place where you've never seen as many data breaches and security breaches as we've seen recently, and especially with everything going virtually and online, dealing with all kinds of cyber everything, and being in a very, very digital space now as a result of, current circumstances with respect to COVID and so on. Especially with home working issues and breaches coming up, leaving your laptop open and friends coming in and seeing what you have on the screen, or maybe even messing with your laptop, who knows, maybe they're not such good friends. But just using as certain examples, home working presents a lot of security issues these days, vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. It may be something that we do decide to change in the future for reporting purposes, but for now, that specific window that's mentioned in other laws is not in ours. We do have a requirement to do it, as soon as you possibly can, but reach out to us, talk to us. We want to support proper breach reporting and not have you avoid it out of some sort of fear that you're going to blow a deadline and get fined or something like that. So what does actual breach reporting look like? From the law, again, clear and plain language, the nature of so state in clear and plain language the nature of the breach, and contain at least the information provided for in Articles 41, 4B to D. So you can go to the data protection law and look up what those articles are, but it's basic information that you would provide in a breach: what happened, what your company is, and so on and so forth. So, it's kind of basic stuff that you would expect to be able to provide in a breach, but at the same time, some of the topics and some of the further information that you'd need to provide under those might be quite elaborate. So, these are the initial questions that we would want to get feedback on in Articles 41, 4B to D. And then also where communication to individual data subjects, for example, if you have to report to the data subject under Article 42, will involve disproportionate effort, a public communication or similar measure by the controller whereby the data subjects are informed in an equally efficient manner shall be sufficient. So that basically all just means that you issue an email to everyone in your database who may have been affected, but not necessarily everyone in your database. I say that may have been affected because, again, you don't want to spam people that don't necessarily need to know. If you're sure that you can narrow it down to a certain group of personal data, then send it to them. If you can't, then maybe you do need to send a more blanket sort of email to everybody, or you can publish something on your website, or you can do both. You can put something out in the news, on Twitter, social media. There are multiple ways of letting people know exactly what happened in your data breach. So that is something that you can consider as well. What a disproportionate effort is, again, is an assessment that you as an entity need to make. How burdensome would it be to contact every single person that was affected? If it was 25 people, send an individual email to 25 people, or a letter or a communication of some sort. Call them up and document it in writing somehow that you've spoken with these people or what have you. But if it's something that is quite burdensome, quite costly, all these other things that you can take into account, then consider maybe another approach. We do have guidance available on the Data Protection Guidance website, on the DIFC website, so you can hyperlink. We'll be putting these slides up on the guidance website as well. So, if you're not sure exactly which guidance document to go to, but it is pretty obvious. It's called Security Breach Reporting. It tells you how to report a security breach and what other laws and issues to consider. So hopefully you find that helpful in making your assessments. Okay. The last bit here, again, you may have all seen, but I left it in these slides as well for consistency so that you're very, very clear and you understand that even security breach reporting is covered off in your notification process. So when you do notify with respect to onboarding, or if you've never told us that you process personal data before, but you would like to tell us that now, you go to the notification section of the portal, as it says here in our notes here, about notifying changes and duty to notify changes. You need to not necessarily do your breach reporting by way of the portal, but if you have changed or updated your security measures, you can update that information in the portal as well. Okay, so through your notification, you can change certain particulars about your notification. I'm saying here again, for new entities, don't select that you don't process personal data just because you technically don't have data to process yet because you're too new, or to avoid paying the notification fee. The fines for that and not notifying when you're supposed to are quite a lot more than the fee. And what does this provide you? It provides you access to free outreach sessions like these that give you guidance, that give you tips, and the brilliant people that we have speaking on them. And it also gives you access, as I said, to that sort of support as a regulator to be able to assist you in figuring out what happened. And again, we do have to take enforcement action sometime in that regard, but we also, are here to listen and understand exactly what happened, and maybe refer you to the right directions to be able to resolve it. So basically, keep in mind as well, and you'll see the same slide basically for existing entities. I say the same thing. Processing personal data, you do need to notify about. And what I was about to say basically was that security is an issue, and not notifying that you process personal data is also part of a sort of security position that you're taking. It is helpful through your notification and translating that information to our public register to know that you process personal data. And it is one way through the public register, through your notification, to let people know that. And it is, again, a security issue when you don't let people know that, because you may be collecting their data and they don't have the options or the choices to be able to regulate that data themselves as they do under the law, which, in my mind also creates a security issue, as I said. So, I wanted to mention it, as I said, just so that you're aware again, if you haven't notified and you think you are starting to think now through this conversation that you should notify. Again, you don't necessarily notify your security breaches through the platform. We may implement that sometime in the future as a general sort of services platform for you, but we haven't quite done that yet. So if you want to notify, read the breach guidance, please, and you can notify directly to the commissioner's email address that is at the end of this slide deck. Talking about enforcement as well with respect to security, the DIFC Data Protection Law became enforceable October 1st, so that means basically we can now issue general and administrative fines. We have guidance about those fines and sanctions on the website as well, so you can read what the risk is there, and make your assessment as to how you want to approach, in this case, security preparedness. But thinking about it, failure to have your technical and organizational measures in place is one of the issues that is cited in Schedule 2 under our fines and enforcement. It is required as part of the compliance program to at least be able to address your security position and what it is that you're doing to secure your data, but also, and it doesn't, necessarily have to be elaborate if you don't do a lot of processing. Maybe mention what it is that you do in terms of your processes or incident management or what have you. But if, again, you're a larger organization, that would be one of the policies you want in your suite of compliance policies anyway. But failure to report a security breach in accordance with the data protection law is a contravention not only of the law subjecting you to administrative fines, but it may also subject you to general fines for the breach itself. So be aware of that. Enforcement isn't something that we love here in the commissioner's office, but where it is required, we do take measures to enforce the law and make sure that you understand how to hopefully prevent it happening again. And again, I say there's fines and sanctions and so on and so forth, but enforcement can also look very much like supervision from our side, giving you sort of a framework, at least not necessarily again as a part of legal advice, but what we would expect you to improve, or maybe imposing some sort of training program or something like that. So we take a sort of wider approach to enforcement than just sticking with the fines. Sometimes just taking that time out of your business's busy schedule to address these issues may be, let's say, quote unquote, I hate to use the word, but punishment enough. But in any case, because time is money and you need resource and everything like that. So it is helpful, though, to be able to look at these things as, not only monitoring and supervision, but enforcement issues that are associated with improper reporting on security breaches and improper preparedness with respect to your technical and organizational measures. Right. So last bit here as we come to the last 20 minutes, and we'll open it up to questions. We have just some basic information for you again that I really wanted to make sure remains in all of our presentations. We have the link here. You can see all the hyperlinks to the DIFC data protection website. You can then see we have a hyperlink to the guidance page, which you have a screenshot there of all of our guidance. There have been a few things added as well, just very recently, and then also a link to an example compliance checklist in DPIA, which will help you not only comply with the security requirements under the law, which again are basically just having technical organizational measures in place and having some means of breach reporting, or at least being prepared for it, but also to go through the other sections of the law and see what you can do to comply better with it. And then some further additional resources. The screenshot again here on the left, you'll see that there are data protection assessment tools on our guidance website as well. We have applicability, data protection officers, data export and sharing, and high-risk processing activities. In fact, actually, we added one on notifications as well, whether or not you need to notify. But you can see here these assessment tools are very short sort of surveys that you can take to, and it's not surveys in the sense that we record your data, it's just a little functional kind of click a few answers, yes or no, and it gives you an idea of what you may need to do. But again, we don't collect any data when you do it other than cookies basically on your website, but we do not require you to register to take these surveys or anything like that. So we don't know who's answering what. So we just gave it as a free tool to be able to run through some questions about whether or not you should take action with respect to any of these items. So we have other resources as well, FAQs page, Guide to Data Protection Law number 5, which has some extensive information and about security that then leads you to the security breach reporting guidance. As I mentioned, there's the 4 assessment tools, and also PwC created a free DIFC Data Protection Law maturity assessment tool, which we sent around via communication from the DIFC General Marketing Communications. So you hopefully would have got that. If you did get it, it's not mandatory for you to do this assessment tool. It's not the annual assessment that's mentioned in Article 19 either. It's just a free tool that PwC put together to help you understand where your organization is with respect to compliance with our law. And you can also set some tolerance levels in doing the assessment for where you'd like to be, and it tells you kind of what you need to do to get there. Okay, we've included this link in both the onboarding process as well as in the service request function of the client portal, so you can also reach it that way, or you can dig up that email that we sent you as well. And you can use this hyperlink, quite frankly, if you go to any of our guidance with these intro slides, you can take a look at it from there. If you do use it, it's not our tool. We don't have any control over access issues or why the link isn't working or what have you. You might want to just contact PwC directly in that case. Okay. And then finally, a sort of general resources list. These are some of the things that have been mentioned throughout the article just in one place so that you, in the slide deck in one place so that you don't necessarily have to go hunting for it. And you'll see at the bottom there as well, this is the press release about the DFSA Cyber Threat Intelligence Platform. Again, I can't stress enough how important it will be for you to sign up for that. I really think it was a useful tool for you to be able to put in your security arsenal, let's say. And that's it. That's the commissioner's inbox information that you have about security breaches, questions you have about the law, not necessarily questions about the portal. The portal help desk can help you with the portal itself and registering, notifying, I should say. But if you have questions about the law, about issues that you maybe have, concerns, reporting to be done, and sort of in terms of breaches and so on, you can reach me at the commissioner's inbox. I'm not the commissioner, but I do represent him, and he gets this information as well. I do share it with him. But in any case, that's it for now. I want to thank Ken and Bina again, and we'll all stick around for any questions that you may have. I think there are probably some in the question box, right, Maristella? Yeah, okay, great. So let's see. Oh, goodness, where'd it go? Oh, I just lost the question box. Sorry, guys, 2 seconds. Let me just find what I've done with it now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go find it again. Yeah, if you can maybe start reading some of the questions out, please, Maristella, that would be great. Thank you.
So the first question here is Article 41 refers to a data subject's confidentiality in the event of a breach affecting one data subject. Do we report the breach, or is there any threshold?
Right, so that, I hate to say it in wishy-washy sort of lawyer terms, but that is that is basically an assessment that you have to make in terms of the data itself, in terms of the context of the breach, how far or how broad a reach the exposure is, that sort of thing. So it depends on the circumstances is really the answer. And again, it doesn't really give you a solid response with respect to it, but you do have to take into account all of the factors in each particular situation to make that determination. If you find it difficult to make that determination, I guess what you can do is even a data impact assessment, a data protection impact assessment of the breach itself, and kind of run through those questions that you would before something like this happens, or when you're preparing for a project, implementing that sort of privacy by design or default concept. Who are the data subjects? What do we have their data for? What could possibly happen to them? Or where are we processing it? That sort of thing. And then maybe come to a conclusion as to the risks that you are presented with, and what confidentiality, for example, really means in that particular context. Has it been breached or not? Maybe that's not 100% helpful, but I'm trying to at least explain that, you have to look at it in each situation and some of the things that you possibly can do in order to make your summary. Right, so let's see. As a small representative office in the DIFC and our head office being in Spain with our legal department there, how do you advise us submitting the GDPR requirements, since our team locally does not have the areas of expertise that our legal team has in Spain? Can we include them in the DIFC trainings so that our legal department in Spain can submit the right information on behalf of our small office here in Dubai? Who would be our point of contact? So yeah, I mean, there are similarities, as I said at the outset, between the GDPR and the DIFC data protection law. And very often, if you're prepared enough for the DIFC, for the GDPR or the UK Data Protection Act or other similar laws. We wrote it so that it is easy and seamless enough for you to be able to comply with ours, with a few minor exceptions like where it is or isn't mandatory to appoint a DPO, or having certain policies in place. So the likelihood is that if you are sure that through another part of your organization where maybe your HQ sits, or if they're in Europe largely and you're a branch office here, for example, and you are complying with the GDPR, you question them to make sure that you're confident that they're complying with it. You probably can also, sort of in your policies say that, this applies globally, or it takes into account the DIFC data protection law, and so on and so forth. So that is, an option for you. I can't really legally advise you one way or the other to do that. If you are unsure, you should take the legal advice of your team, have them examine the law, have them understand, any differences or gaps between the DIFC data protection law and in this case the GDPR. As I said, that Clyde & Co. article at the beginning gives you a good overview of that, so you can see if there's any major issues that you might fall down on. And if you do have questions from your team in Spain, you can always give them the commissioner's email address that I showed you at the end at that last slide, and they can ask questions as well. Somebody needs to be responsible for ensuring that there's compliance with the law, and maybe they make an internal assessment at the outset that the DIFC data protection law is sufficiently covered by what they're already doing. But we always welcome questions. It's not a problem. Let's see. This is a question about the portal. I think we need to take that separately. It's not really even about the security piece. Let's see, one more question. Is there any update to the requirement for non-DIFC processors to register with Commission or under Article, this is also about the portal. You can see in the law, for example, it says that controllers and processors are required to notify. So I think that was kind of a portal question, not necessarily about security, but helpful, hopefully, to have answered it. Any other questions? Do we have any hands up, or any further things that we need to cover here? Okay, there was a question about, is this different and not a DP Law webinar? It's a cybersecurity platform webinar. Yeah, this is a data protection law webinar about security specifically. So, as we were saying, we were talking about tools that you can use, and the cybersecurity platform is one of them. I don't know. I think we probably don't have any other questions coming in, so we can wrap it up. I can hand over one more time to Vina and Ken if they want to have any final words here. Vina, Ken, you can open your mics, and if you have nothing to say, that's fine too. But
Yes, thanks, Larry. I'll just make one comment about incident reporting for those firms that are regulated by the DFSA. So we're in complete agreement that the 72 hours is not always practicable. We do have a separate reporting requirement to the DFSA if you're authorized, and we would want something to be reported within 72 hours. It's not a prescriptive requirement, it's a guideline, but we do the reporting in 2 stages, recognizing that you wouldn't have all the information. So within 72 hours, we would like to know if you've suffered an incident and if there has been any impact, particularly to clients and the data. And we like to know that, one, to know if the event was such that you're able to continue doing business, and is there possible systemic risk that we need to consider to any other firms? All of the other information behind what are all the specific details of the incident, your communication plan, how you're dealing with it, we can deal with that later. But initially, we want to know that an incident happened. Do we need to consider this for other institutions? If so, we'll put the information on the platform, or we'll reach out to other institutions that might be affected, and then we'll follow up with the rest later.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, that's really good to know. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so it's for those financial services firms that are authorized and supervised by the DFSA, there is a guideline about 72 hours, but as Ken described, it's a sort of 2-stage thing, and the initial feedback that you need to give is within that 72-hour time frame. We don't require it under the law specifically, but for the purposes of financial services entities, be aware, please, of that guideline from the DFSA. Okay, So thank you, Ken. That's really important to know. And Veena, anything you want to add to wrap up?
Just adding on to what Ken said, a proper good incident management, the preparation, detection, the whole life cycle is very, very important from a breach management perspective. Thank you, Laurie.
Yep, absolutely, Veena. That's 100% spot on. That, incident reporting, knowing what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, what time frame you have from finding out about a breach or an incident or a security threat or what have you, and dealing with it is, those first few hours, first couple of days are just critical. And having a proper incident reporting policy in place and processes and a calling tree and who you're going to message, who you're going to contact, even if that means contacting authorities as well, not just the commissioner necessarily, but in certain cases it may be criminal activity that you need to report. Maybe you have to consider reporting to other authorities as well, where you may have other data protection laws at play. So these are all things that you really need to consider, and a proper incident response and management policy is of utmost importance for that. Again, to the extent of the processing that you do, you may be a small firm, but you process a lot of really important, critical personal data that if it gets leaked, there's some significant threat to the people who it's been leaked about. That, maybe requires some further extensive incident management processes in place. But if you're, not really even collecting much personal data and you don't necessarily process a lot of it, then, you pitch your policies accordingly. So just bear that in mind. We don't want it to sound sort of overwhelming or impossible to achieve. These are all completely achievable things, and they'll only enhance your business and the policies and readiness you have for breach incident response. Okay, so thank you for that, Veena. That's also a really helpful piece of advice. And I think I don't see any other questions having come in, so I'll just say thank you again to Ken and Veena. Really great having you guys here. Really, really enriched the conversation, and hopefully this was helpful to everyone to understand security breach reporting under the data protection law a little bit more. And we'll hopefully see you again in the new year with some additional information for you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you all.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.